Thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to be talking to these stalwarts from the industry about design and building the hospitality industry of the future. So in today's conversation, I'm going to focus about innovation in design, building materials, and of course, how do you implement a sustainable design future? So I'm really excited, and I'm going to just jump right in. My first question is going to be for Reza and Khozema, and I hope both of y'all are ready for it. So in the last 5 years, what do you all feel have been notable innovations in design and building that you feel have really impacted your practice?
So I will honestly tell you, I think so the complete fraternity and the industry is becoming more and more responsible and sensitive towards the sustainability. And there is so much of design, passive design, design factors which are being incorporated in our design so that we can grow much more towards, easily grow toward from sustainability, and we can start thinking about net zero and zero decarbonization footprints, zero carbon footprints kind of direction which we can move on to it. I believe there has been huge support from the brands in that respect, and people are saying that it may not be an international, but even Indian credits of being sustainable or being gold, platinum, whatever, which helps the client to at least feel a little good about it, that the project is getting classified or being awarded as a sustainable and a green project.
Right.
I believe also that the action as a responsible architect and design fraternity is taking there has been a huge change. So sustainability or factors like those have been inculcated in our day-to-day routine of design. So it's no more thinking process as such.
Right.
It has become, the action is by subconscious mind that this needs to go into it.
Right, but if I'm going to trouble you for a specific innovation that you feel you found really interesting, or it could be internationally, something that they're using, something which you've been like, wow, this is really unique, like from that perspective.
So Esha, the best thing which has happened in design industry is
Can't hear him, no?
we can't actually, there is a lot of echoing which is happening here, but I don't know, this is the complaint which we have been getting from earlier panels also. So the most important fact which is happening in the industry is the passive design incorporation in order to make it more and more better. Okay. So in order to make it more sustainable, for example, you don't, if you want to create glazing, you create glazing on the south and the west, but if the location demands or whatever, but you take adequate action or adequate design factors, incorporate them in design in such a manner that your direct glares, your sunlight, your heat values are reduced drastically into that. Right. So all those passive design directions which are being taken are the biggest incorporation in terms of design industry which is happening. And I feel also that once you get into those areas, you find a drastical change in numbers when you start comparing with
Got it. So passive design factors, I think, is what I take away from you. Reza, what about you?
I'm sorry, I can't hear properly. I can't hear the question, but anyway, I got what you want is, basically, COVID taught us a lot of things. In the pandemic, we went back, and previously we were just working, we were not thinking, but that period that we had the COVID, we took a step back and we started thinking what we are doing, because prior to that we were just going ahead and doing a lot of things without thinking. And in that period we realized that how important the environment was. We started seeing less pollution, and we started enjoying life more. So I think that was a game changer. Actually, God wanted us to take the step back and start looking that, this space is, you got to take care of it. And that actually changed the whole perspective of all designers and everybody. And we started looking at sustainability in a more serious manner. And so we started designing more sensibly. And I think designing sensibly is to be more sustainable. That's my take on that.
But again, I'm going to trouble you for a specific material or a specific, I know you're saying design sensibly, but something which has really interested you in the last 3 years, post-COVID, like since that's been a journey for you as well.
So I think
now it's clearer.
Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
it's better.
Yeah? Okay.
So I think, we started looking at technology more than actually, doing work just for the sake of doing work. So we started looking at technology and we started designing with technology and thinking in a better fashion and going ahead.
Right. Got it. And I'm going to ask Reema this as well, is how does design change from an international perspective to an Indian perspective, right? Because there's so many variable factors. So how do you feel as a hotelier that changes for you?
Yeah, there are a lot of variables which changes when you adapt the design to global versus Indian context. Definitely there is a variable factors such as regulation framework, right? Internationally, there are frameworks for building codes which adapts building codes, as well as there are additional standards related to sustainability. So that becomes one of the core when they are designing the building. They're also thinking about, the sustainable measures, not after designing what we can do to make it sustainable. So I think it is important to have it like all integrated, because if we have a basic platform which is right and sustainable, only then we can build it further and maintain and run it efficiently. So that is important. And whereas like in India, we follow, MBC. There is a lot of awareness regarding sustainability, the materials, nanotechnology, or VOC paints and all of it. But that goes to the discretion of individual owner and individual project, and depends more on the affordability perspective, like whether it is affordable for the project to have those sustainable measures or no. But if we have an integrated approach to our standards, national building codes, and additional sustainable standards, then we can really build right.
Vikram, you can also weigh in over here. Is even factors like climate, the topography, culture, how does that change as well?
Yeah, so we've been discussing sustainability since morning. Everybody's spoken so much about it, and all good thoughts have come through. All the speakers earlier we've been bashing this subject since morning completely. But I know there is something known as responsible sustainability, luxury, responsible luxury as well. So this is something that, you're asking what kind of materials we can get through to. So like you can't hear me? Can you hear me now? No. Yeah. I think it's the monitor.
I think Reza's struggling. Yeah. It's hard for me to navigate.
Hello.
Can you hear me now? Is
I
it
can
better?
hear you. Yeah, much
Yeah,
better.
and would you want to say something back?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me now?
Much better, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Something
All right.
happened.
Sorry, could you start over again?
No, so I was talking about sustainable, the fact that we've been discussing this since morning. But you asked Reza a question, and Khozema also, that, what's new and sustainable, what is the materials used and all that. So I think, like we were discussing with Mr. Khurana or Hemant, and so that, there is things about biophilic natural architecture that's happening everywhere. There is the use of glass, the use of light, the use of material that is, moving away from breaking quarries and taking on marble and creating a sense of luxury or even a sense of stone that can be used. There's something called agate, which can be used in marble form as well. So there is a material change. Of course, in construction, there's a lot of material changes that have happened, and it has grown over the years. We're moving out of the normal red bricks, and we're going to fly ash and stuff like that. And therefore, you get all the creditations from the IGBC and the leads and all that. So that is very important. So in terms of what we do for this is, sorry, what was your question again? I just started answering his question, in fact.
Changing design, building and innovation, international versus
Yeah, so design,
Indian,
building, and innovation, same thing. I mean, this is what I was talking about. We have our brand standards.
Right.
We have our own thought processes on how to deal with this. But you may not always see sustainable direct contact with the guest, okay?
Right.
It's always happening at the back. There's a whole army of people behind who's working on sustainability. So to give you an example, we moved to solar power and wind power, okay? So 95% of our energy is coming from there. So that is adding to our sustainability factor. We have moved to EV. We are the first ones to put EV boats on the Udaipur Lake. So, we are going into that. We've got a whole decarbonization plan for the next 10 years, which we're doing. And much more. I think Mr. Bhatnagar also said in the afternoon, we have got our own fragrance, we've got our own food, we've got our own water bottling plants. All this is a whole stuff that is happening, which we are educating the guest about. That yes, you want to come to us, definitely. We are luxury. It's not that we are not luxury, but we are still doing all this, So there's two ways of looking at it. One is to say material. That's the first thing that comes to your head. Is this sustainable or not? But one is what is actually happening, and we are actually achieving results in that, So that's what it is. So innovation will keep going on. Material will keep coming up. Ideas will keep coming up. Now we need to go into AI, the next step.
100%. Yeah. It takes me back to what we were discussing earlier, and Khozema was talking about carbon footprint. So as designers, I think there's this international notion that Italian marble is the gold standard of luxury, right?
Yeah.
So I think it would be an interesting dialogue between a designer and a hotelier. How do you convince your client otherwise, right? You were talking about using Indian marble. How do we make Indian marble luxury and while still keeping our carbon footprint lower?
So I would say, Esha, luxury is a very ambiguity. There is a lot of ambiguity. The definition of a luxury for a different level of people is different. For a budget hotel, luxury, an Indian stone being laid in the lobby would be also, in terms of interior, would be luxury instead of tiles. So we need to be little sensitive to what design, and as Reza very correctly said, we need to be sensitive and sensible. Designing is one of the key factor in this. Now, I'll tell you, even as I told you earlier also, we did one project in Bhubaneswar. We just finished, and we opened it. The client all of a sudden thought that, why didn't we go for credit? And we invited somebody to credit it, and we got a gold. We never thought about it that we never intended. So our actions were all at subconscious mind level were towards sustainability. We never ever thought. The only thing I would say sustainability and the green project is something we need to move a little step ahead of it and look at the carbon footprint. What kind of carbon footprint? Earlier people used to import so much of furniture. Today we can build in. We have in each of the zone, we have got lovely furniture manufacturers in most of the regions. Why can't we use them? Right. This reduces the carbon footprint. We should look at carbon footprint more than sustainability, because that is a responsibility of every designer and architect to do it. Secondly, we have used Indian stone very beautifully. In few of the resorts, we have used even quota, and it is so well appreciated, because you need to be a little more sensitive when you are designing. If we are doing one project even in Bhopal, where we are using Indian stone. We are trying to use Indian stone in a very big way. So it is not necessary that only luxury can be defined by an imported stone. It is not necessary that I need to use imported furniture in order to be define a luxury.
Right. So I think this is where I go back to Vikram and Reema, where I ask you all, when you all have international guidelines or specifications that you all need to meet, is now being flexible the norm in terms of not just keeping those guidelines in mind? Are you all open to, like Khozema said, different materials in those aspects?
Yeah, one of the important factor for sustainability is also like, we need to look inward, and make use of available resources and have design and materials which can reduce the impact of carbon footprint and not importing all the time, and see what is already available. I think in India you can really leverage on that, because India is somehow influenced with culture. And if we can just have those materials and applications in which we are reclaiming, the local finishes, materials, whether it's like wood or other materials. I know that the Indian government is working on a technology of paint that is being produced by, put together by a Japanese company. And they are coming up with something which actually, by applying that paint to your facade, you can get 40% of sustainable building. That is really amazing, right? And that project right now is being managed by the government, and they are applying it in their government buildings. And imagine if the success rate is really good, and if they are able to, have the benefit of 40% of, energy saving. And they also claim that, because we always, when we talk about sustainable thing, we always think about how we can, have conservation of energy and all of that. But we often neglect that facade also give us 40% of sustainable building. And we focus more on those second layer, like what Khozema said, right? What is like there, which you see, but neglect on what is there at the foundational level. So there are a lot of initiatives like nanotechnology. Now these things are being aware, like people are aware, there are factories, there are products which are also available at the local market, so which can be actually used, rather than every time importing it from outside. So we need to really look inward.
Reza, I think you want to add something.
I just want to add something, because earlier I couldn't hear, now I can hear, so I'm getting into the discussion. So we are doing a project, where in UP, and there we are getting all our resources from within UP. So we are using all the products from there, we are using the artisans from there, and we are creating a studio within the project. So that we're going to...
Are you talking about an art residency? Sorry again.
No, it's not an art residency, it's a hotel. So
I'm just going to fix your mic, because you're again... try. Just hold it closer, maybe. Yeah.
Away? Okay.
So you were saying you're sourcing art locally, and
so we are sourcing art. We are sourcing materials, means like tiles. Artisans are doing the basic, engraving, carving, and everything from local. And we're putting up a studio as well within the project, which is going to be like a gallery. And the products would be on sale as well. So we are promoting local art, and we are promoting local artisans and everything as well. So, that's something we've done in this new project that we are doing.
Right. I think that's very interesting. We've been to a lot of properties recently, but you're hiring locally as well to increase, jobs around the area. So I think, and bringing the culture in, because today the traveler is looking for local flavor, local culture. I don't think everyone wants the typical hotel room. So I think that's very interesting. Hemant, you want to add anything? Sure, of course.
See, I don't think so. You spoke about the brand guideline and kind of thing. I don't think so. Any of the brand currently is saying that you need to import those things.
Right.
None of them are saying, even in terms of design, look and feel also, they say, this is a look and feel, this is a guideline. So if we can interpret it in a very Indian contextual, which also helped us to create an identity for each and every project, because sometimes we are doing 3 hotels in a city and all 3 have to look different. So if we can contextualize it, we can do the localization, I think so we will do 50% of our job of sustainability will be done at that point of time. Yeah. So specifications will come, our footprints are going to be very, very low.
Hemant, do you want to add anything here?
Thank you. Yeah, I hope I'm audible. Yeah, thank you. So I have as they say, August company. I have 2 hoteliers and 2 architects. So I was listening to their conversation, and it brings in a lot of perspective to me as a manufacturer. So I'm a supplier of different solutions, materials, and we truly try to bring the perspective of the users. Apart from an architect and a hotelier, we also try to bring in perspectives of the user. Finally, the hospitality industry is existing because we have the occupants, right? People who come, stay and pay for their services here. So I would say when we look at, I think there are several things that have come up, but I would say that the first point is, I think from a purely awareness perspective, I would say that hospitality as an industry is today streets ahead of any other industry, because I think we have guests who are well traveled. They've seen not just in India but abroad, right? People talk about sustainability. I think what Khozema was referring to, so the responsibility or making hotels responsibly, I think that's already in place. There is no question. Right. And you see a very good example of that. If you are in this hotel today, if you see, they don't dispense water in plastic bottles, right? So there are some things which are now, very naturally built into, especially the top chains, right? But I would say still from a buildings perspective, when we are designing and building, I don't think that level of awareness is still there, right? And so to throw some numbers, we know that India, like yesterday, I think it was Mr. Kachru, I was in the session and I was listening to that, and what he rightly pointed out is that India is a country of 1.4 billion people, and so we've got to build a lot, right? So if you just look at the per capita consumption of anything, it's the lowest in the world, including hotels, right? The least that you see anywhere in the world. So what that tells you is that in the coming decades, we have to build a lot, and we will have, right now we probably are building 25,000-30,000 keys every year. This number will go up substantially till it reaches a certain level and then it saturates. So that means for the next few decades, we can be assured of the fact that we are going to build a lot, and hospitality as an industry is not the only industry which will build. You will have housing. Nearly 70% of India's population is still outside the urban centers, right? So I think there is a lot of competition that will emerge for resources. So we have to think about, do we have the resources to build? If we have just built 20-25% of what we require in the coming decades, so we need a lot of resources, and we don't have that. So my thinking on this is very simple, is that as designers, architects, hotel chain owners, I think we have to start thinking of this, particularly in a country like India, right? So when we've got to build a lot. So I think from conventional ways of looking at things, a lot of hotels still get designed, built like that. There is a lot of new thoughts, but from a sheer awareness perspective, we don't know that buildings account for the largest share of carbon dioxide emissions, right? 40% of global emission is accounted for by the buildings. And hotels are even more intense because you always have the lights and the air conditioning on. So when you have that kind of carbon dioxide emission, how can you think differently and start designing sustainably, right? So we take of the 40%, nearly 1/3 of that is while building, right, all the materials and technologies we use, and the balance is in the usage. And we have, when you talk about usage, you use the right kind of technologies. We heard about glazing, ventilation, natural light. So how can we incorporate all that into the design? I think that will make a big impact, and India will certainly require a lot of new thinking on designing its buildings. And I think today, thanks to some of the leading hotel chains coming from across the world, I think that is already happening in India, but even the Indian chains are taking up to this concept very well. So I think as I would say a manufacturer of materials and suppliers, our emphasis is really on providing materials and solutions which have very low embodied energy, right? That's first part. And then when we provide these solutions, what we are doing is we are ensuring while in the usage, we reduce the carbon dioxide emissions by adopting, for example, a thermal glazing which cuts heat. So you don't allow a lot of heat inside, so you can use the natural light, but the heat doesn't come inside. So both on the design and construction stage as well as on the usage side, I think there's a lot that needs to be done. A good beginning has been made, but I would still say that India has to, particularly in this sector, think a lot more and think about how we can adopt technologies that, you know, if you go back to the heritage of India, we didn't have modern technology, but some of the buildings that we see that are still existing were designed so well, right, and using the right materials. So I think there is a lot that has to happen. And I think it's only through this collaborative effort that I see, you know, all of us coming together and really looking at this particular aspect that I talked about, that 40% of CO2 emission is through buildings. We all talk about electric vehicles and various other things. Mobility or vehicles only account for 20% of global CO2 emission. So that's the kind of difference we are talking about. So when we can pay so much attention to an electric vehicle and not pay anything close to that in terms of attention to really designing and building, you know, where we are going to see a huge amount of CO2 emission, then we are not responsible. But I would say this industry is really, you know, much ahead in terms of its thought, and I'm sure that we will see a lot of progress in the coming decades.
Right. Vikram, I'm going to ask you the next one. Given your experience in the industry, can you name a piece of architecture or a building or something that for you is the gold standard in innovation and design and materials? And why, of course, do you feel it's the gold standard for you?
Your question is about which building fits the gold standard?
Which is your
Go-to building.
Go-to, and has been that one.
Except for a Leela hotel.
Something anywhere. It could be a Leela hotel.
So I must say that, you know, all our hotels, Leela hotels, they're absolutely gold standard. I go by that, yeah. All of them, all the palaces are, they're all certified, they've all got IGBC ratings, we are all following the greenhouse gas emission protocols, we are following everything. And we have reached a stage where we have pumped in tons of money in rebuilding the assets and getting them, you know, into great shape now. Of course, there is a luxury element to it, which is fabulous, which cannot be compared because we are in a different league completely. That's what I definitely feel. Yeah, but I still hold my, I mean, I've been through many brands, but I think this is gold standard, definitely, for me. Yeah. Globally, I mean, I don't want to go international on this.
Okay, fine. So we'll go with Leela.
Because there is another
fine.
huge world out there which is yet undiscovered. I mean, so I think it's better to stay within the country. You know, locally.
Fine.
Yeah.
Reza, you, which building, piece of architecture would you pick? Same question to you. Which piece of architecture, property do you feel is the gold standard for you in terms of sustainability, innovation, and building materials?
So I think, as I said, you have to build sensibly. Don't pick up a building from overseas and just bring it into India and just place it over here. Look at the context, look at the surrounding, and then build.
No, but which particular project, building, property would you say?
I love all my buildings. So all of them are good.
That's not acceptable. You have to pick one. Something interesting you did in a recent one, which for you really stood out,
So
maybe during COVID.
we did a building, of course, we did the Taj in Ahmedabad, and there, we got in the windmill. The client got a windmill, and he's supplying energy from the windmill.
From the windmill, okay.
Yeah, so he's got two properties, and both the properties he's got the windmill, and he's supplying electricity from there. So it's green, totally green. And I think that was the best thing the client did, and I'm really proud of that.
So not solar energy, wind energy is what we're looking at for this one. Interesting. Reema, for you?
So it'll be hard to actually point one.
But I'm going to
point one. But I'll tell you, like Novotel, we are upcoming, like Novotel, we are doing in Goa.
Okay.
That is going to be like really an iconic hotel, where we are incorporating and establishing a live facade.
A live facade.
Live facade, yes. So which is inspired by biophilic design. Yeah, so you will see that right on the facade, and most of the materials, finishes, what we have used is locally sourced. And even the timber, the materials, all of it. So it's basically a whole holistic approach to the entire hotel. And I think Goa is a good place where you can actually have the sustainable hotel. And there is a lot of local engagement which we are doing, and also focusing on reducing the food wastage, the buffet counters and all of that.
Reducing buffet counters.
Food wastage.
Food wastage.
Yeah, being conscious about our F&B offerings also.
I think that's very important, 100%. Khozema, for you?
So I would, of late we did a couple of projects which I think so they are really very nice and sustainable, and very, especially one was the most challenging one for us in terms of bringing all this sustainable factor into it was Pilibhit House.
Which one?
Pilibhit House in
Okay.
Haridwar. A very small footprint, Ganga next to the project, and so to bring in, to treat the sewage, to bring in the power, to bring in a lot of other things of sustainability, we had several challenges. And I think so in that footprint and maintaining that Haridwar facade kind of architecture which was there, and restored Haveli which we did, I believe that was one of the most challenging one. We did another one which was Devi Ratan, but that we had all the liberty with us. We had
Which was the second one?
Devi Ratan.
Devi
Ratan. It's both of them are selections, and I think so both had different challenges, and but we feel that they both have got nice all the passive factors of design which need to be taken care for to bring in more design oriented sustainability.
Hemant, you want to, any project you've supplied to?
Yeah. In fact, so I'm not an expert, but I would say that I just reiterate what I said earlier, which is, if you look at the hospitality industry today, I think the design ethos, the way it's being done, constructed, used, I think there's a lot of change in the last decade or so that I've seen. And that's also thanks to one, I worked on this as a supplier on, I remember going to Aerocity at a time when there were no hotels there, and we had this whole lot of international chains which came in, and including Accor, and so having worked with them, what I learned is that they have standards internationally, and they brought a lot of those standards into India, and of course adapted. And so that really helped. And you need these initial, what you call as early adopters, so people who come educate, and they've got the best practices. So I saw and learned a lot from those initial experiences. And what I see in the last, a decade or a decade and a half is that I see a distinct change. And I see the industry, particularly the hospitality industry, there's of course awareness everywhere, but this particular industry, I think using the term holistically, like what was mentioned earlier, I think there is a focus on holistically designing, because I think the industry is fully aware of its responsibility, and from our side as a supplier, what we are trying to make sure is that we are helping, through a few actions. So first action is really understanding the needs. So when they bring in a lot of requirements, how do we develop things in India? So we invest a lot in R&D in India to making sure that we have the right materials and the technologies which are specifically adapted for Indian environment, which can be harsh, unlike many of the Western countries, right? So I think first really developing right kind of materials and solutions, that's one. And then working closely with them to ensure that this is actually applied in real life, right? So because that calls for a whole change of ecosystem, because all the existing architects, contractors, they're used to doing things in a certain way. So how do we educate them? Then once having educated, how do you build that into the specifications? Once you have the specifications, then making sure that materials are supplied, the right kind of application and training. So we look at it holistically, much like what was said earlier. So I would say as a supplier, we play a very important role as a responsible part of the whole value chain. And that's what we are keen to do, yeah. So I don't have a specific, I know I have a long answer to a short question. I have many examples, but I would say I'm very happy and thrilled to work with many of the people who represent various chains here, both international and domestic. And I must compliment all of them for an outstanding work over the last decade or so in promoting the right way of designing and building. Thank you so much.
I'm going to move on quickly with my last question. I mean, I have two last questions. Vikram, you want to add? Yeah.
I have one last thing, that we're talking about sustainability and we're talking about, we spoke about air, we spoke about water, we spoke about fuel. But the biggest problem is not going to be waste management. Yes. The amount of tons and tons of waste that we are generating everywhere. Yeah. And look at the picture behind you. That's the scary part, is how we're going to deal with that. And I think it's high time we started doing more research on how to recycle, reuse, and instead of taking tons of garbage across the river, we'll figure out something very fast.
Yeah, and that's where I was leading to is, your take on greenwashing in the industry. I think it's like everyone keeps talking about sustainability, but there's so much greenwashing as well. Are we really moving towards a concrete change? We're going to try and quickly answer that before I get to questions and should I jump to my last question?
Please.
Jump to my last question? All right. So, is there a resolution that I can hold each one of you to today for building a more sustainable future? And Vikram, I'll start. Khozema, let me start with you for that one.
So
a resolution we make today that we can hold each other to.
Absolutely, I'm game for it, and I am not so telling, but I would say that we should walk on a part of zero carbon footprint. That is my resolution. Okay. That is my resolution. Then only the country, if I can contribute to that, my country will go to zero carbon footprint.
Zero carbon footprint. Reza, you?
So we as designers, we are very responsible, and we should feel very responsible, and we should design in such a way. So as Vikram just said, materials that we use, it's better we use recycle, and we have to think of not only for construction or building. When you have to dispose them off, how do you dispose them off, and what is the life of it? That's very important. So you have to be very careful when you select a material and even decide how it's going to be disposed.
So resolution to do better waste management, is that what I get from you? Reema, how about you?
I would say 3 E's.
Okay, what are 3 E's?
Effective planning, efficient running, and empowering local community. It starts with people, ends with people.
Lovely, perfect. Very well answered. Vikram, you should follow up with that.
Yeah, I mean, you said the right words. But I think we are heading towards, or our commitment for the Leela and Brookfield team is that we are heading towards the net zero. We are already working on our scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 documentation. We are cutting off our natural fossil fuels slowly. So we are getting there. We are committed to this by 2025, and between 2025 and 27, we are trying to achieve some numbers that will make us proud for this. So let's hope it works out. But like I said, there's a whole army of people working behind this.
Right.
It's not only architects and people like us who are talking about it.
Hemant, very quickly, your
Yeah, very
answer.
quickly, just a few words. I would say that we are very happy to partner this entire industry, which includes all the designers, architects, hotel chains, developers, to really look at all the aspects through the value chain, right? So right from, having the right materials, which have the right, for example, a lot of recycled content. So these are materials which require minimal application, can be done very fast so that the hotels can be turned around very quickly and can be start to used. Then when we have to reuse some of this, so how can we reuse very quickly? So building this entire, chain, what is called the whole cycle, I think we are happy to partner the whole industry and making sure that we reduce or we have the minimal impact on the environment. And whether you call it as net zero or otherwise, but I think the idea is to really make sure that we leave a legacy behind for our coming generations, which is very positive, is what I would say.
Like a collaborative effort.
Yes, absolutely.
Together to reduce emissions. Lovely. On that note, I'm going to open this discussion up to the audience. In case there are any questions, we can take them.
Thank you.
Take it offline? All right. Perfect.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
So much
Thank you.
for joining
Thank you,
us.
everyone.
Thank you.